crossing you in style someday. Old dream maker,
Thank you for joining us in Stewart Theater. Before we begin, a few quick reminders. Please take a moment to note the nearest exits, located at the left and right of the theater, as well as the rear. In the unlikely event of an emergency, calmly proceed to the nearest exit and move away from the building. Smoking and vaping in the theater is strictly prohibited. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage NC State Student Body President, Knox Trask.
Good morning. Yesterday was a monumental day as we welcome home three-time NC State graduate Christina Hammock Koch. Yeah. We are excited to have you here today with us as to continue the celebration with some very special guests. I'm proud to be the NC State Student Body President, and I'm honored to welcome you to the Launchpad Effect. This event was aptly named to tie in with our very special guest, but also because NC State is itself a launchpad. NC State helped set Christina Koch on her trajectory to the moon, but it didn't make her an astronaut. She obviously did that. What NC State did give her were the tools, problem-solving skills, and support to pursue her dream with confidence. What I've learned already from Ms. Koch is that we are not limited by where we start. Our curiosity and determination will take us far, but NC State, it'll launch us even farther to shatter barriers, set new records, and reach extraordinary heights. It is now my pleasure to introduce our host and Chancellor, Kevin Howell.
Good morning, everyone. We're here today to continue our celebration of Christina Koch and all that she has accomplished. In doing so, we're also celebrating the powerful role that public higher education, and in particularly NC State, played in her life and in the life of countless others. NC State was built to prepare the students of North Carolina to think and do for the greater good, to bring people together, to solve our world's grand challenges. That's the power of public higher education. That's the power of NC State University, and that's the reason we're here today to talk about today with Christina Koch. Now, let me say this. This is going to be a real conversation. No prepared speeches, no PowerPoint slides, Provost. No. Just this table. 3 of my colleagues and 1 amazing astronaut, and of course, you, 700 of our dearest friends. Now, please join me in welcoming our panel. 2-time NC State alum, turned distinguished professor in the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. He's a National Inventors Hall of Famer, member of the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Inventors for the groundbreaking CRISPR genome editing work. Rodolphe Barangou. founding director of our groundbreaking NSF Assist Center, focused on creating the next generation of health wearables, and interim dean of the College of Engineering. Like our guest today, she has earned all 3 of her degrees right here at NC State. Please welcome Veena Misra. Now, our Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation is an award-winning chemical engineer with over 140 published peer reviews, articles, 3 spin-off companies generated by her research. Please welcome Krista Walton. Now, of course, our guest of honor, 3-time NC State alum, NASA astronaut who inspired the world on the record-breaking space flight on Artemis II mission. You know her as Christina. Some of us know her as NC State hero, right? Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Christina Koch. Thank you. Now, before we begin, I'd like to remind everyone, this is a conversation. There's no right or no wrong answers. It's the way we see the world and what we like to see for our future and for generations yet to come. Are you ready?
Yes.
Wait a minute, let's do that again. Are you ready? Let's get started. Christina, I'd like to start with you. You've lived in extreme parts of the world. Antarctica, Greenland. You've solved intense problems under immense pressure. In fact, you've been rocketed into outer space multiple times and then returned to life here on planet Earth. Where in the world did you find the confidence and the courage to do what you do?
Well, thank you, Chancellor, for having me today, and thank you to everyone who's here. It's an honor. I think the important thing to know to start is that overcoming anything and having a certain amount of courage or confidence was never something specific that I tried to do. And secondly, I think the important thing to know about courage is that it's not the absence of fear. It's actually doing things that do scare you, safely. And to that end, if I'm thinking about what I didn't consciously try to overcome and how that came to be, it really comes down to a love of what I was aiming for. When I was a girl, I had pictures of Antarctica up in my room. I had pictures of space. And an intense desire to just contribute in those frontiers is really what allowed me to do those things. To strap myself to a rocket was just the love of the science, the desire to contribute, the desire to be excellent so that I could contribute as much as possible. I held human spaceflight in such high regard that to allow myself the privilege of contributing to it, I had to hold myself to just as high of a standard. And that was really what it was about. It wasn't necessarily overcoming something, a fear. And I think that if we all look at that, not at the barriers, but at the love and the meaning and fulfillment that we find in what we want to achieve, then you don't necessarily need to concentrate so much on what you have to overcome, because that just comes naturally.
Thank you for that beautiful answer. Let me turn to you, Vina. Here at NC State, we do a lot of research to help Christina and her crew and so many others with their research and going to outer space. But what turns a promising idea, a breakthrough, with real-world impact? And how much of the journey is luck versus skills?
Thank you, Chancellor. I want to start off by saying that it's really an honor to be sitting so close to someone who has been the furthest away from this planet. And we are so proud of everything you have done, and you are really an inspiration and a guiding light for exploration. So thank you for your time today. An idea that goes from something in the lab to making an impact is what happened in the Assist Center. And we, in electrical engineering, of course, home of your department, we have been very much building technologies, and one example of this system that we're building are intelligent sensor systems. And these systems can work on very, very low power. They hardly need any sort of energy, and they're almost self-sustaining. So the question was, how do we take these systems, these intelligent sensor systems, and make them benefit society? And so what we realized was that 75% of Americans suffer from chronic conditions. These are conditions like heart disease, asthma, diabetes. And what would really empower these individuals would be the ability to track their data, take actions to improve their health conditions, and change their quality of life. And so in the Assist Center then, we connected our intelligent sensor systems to these chronic conditions, and we enabled systems that were comfortable, wearable, but not only did they track multiple sensing modalities such as cardiac conditions or environmental toxins or respiration rates, but they were also battery-free. So now we could really enable these systems to stay on continuously, therefore allowing patients to have continuous data. So this was the way we connected something in the lab that was sort of cool from an engineering perspective to something that would have impact in society.
So Vina, just a quick follow-up. How does that help humankind? How does that help our communities?
I think providing information to humans that allow them to see their actions that they take and the result of that on their health is very empowering. And so if you can empower that and also use all this data that we're collecting to understand some of the complexities behind different health conditions, it helps us move the field forward. It helps with having better quality of life. And one thing that I wanted to ask Christina, if I may, we have been building sensor systems for a long time, and I wanted to know what sensor systems would you want in space for the human body?
That's a great question. We do have some wearable sensor systems, and some of the challenges that we come up against with them are things like, because we have such strong exercise requirements every single day, having to don and doff those systems, can they actually interface well with the human organism, get sweaty, be worn overnight without waking you up, and things like that, because monitoring our different just parameters, whether that's pulse ox, respiration rate, that's important for monitoring astronaut health. And finding a system, like you said, that's low power, so it doesn't have to be donned and doffed in order to recharge a battery, that doesn't necessarily, that's just robust. It doesn't have errors to wake you up, and it can just go through life. It can do life. That's probably the most important aspects for us. It has to work in microgravity. That's usually not a problem for printed circuit boards, though.
So let me look to my left now, if I may. Would anyone else want to elaborate when research really becomes real for you? Or when did it become real for any of you?
Yeah, I have an example. So I started my faculty career about 20 years ago, And in my research lab, we work on materials that you can think of them like sponges, and we make them to separate molecules. So one example is on the life support systems on the space station, you have to scrub the CO2 out because the astronauts are exhaling it. So we're working on materials for this to do these separations, and they were not stable in humidity. And humidity is everywhere, really bad here right now, but it's even a little bit was enough that the materials would start to fall apart. So we sort of had to go on a side quest to understand why they're falling apart. And so many things happened, and 15 years later, we had discovered materials that not only were stable, but were really good at taking in water from humidity. So from that, we ended up getting new funding from DARPA, Advanced Research Project. And so from that, we created a device that the one we have is about this tall, but they can be scaled. So now you can make drinking water just from ambient humidity using these same materials. And so I think you asked the beginning of the question was like luck versus skills. Right. And I think, the skill part, you're just trying to solve a problem that you know, and sometimes you solve different problems, and you don't, just because it was going wrong, and then it led to this device that, you can make a few liters of drinking water from a tabletop system. So I think that's, now spun out and trying to build that at scale. So.
Okay. Rodolphe, you want?
Yeah, I'm gonna bring us back to Earth, because I didn't go that far, right? If in the audience, if anybody has had like cheese or yogurt in the last 24 hours, you should relate, right? So I work in the food science department, and we work on advanced CRISPR genome editing technologies, and we had a lot of ideas about how to use it. But with both luck and skill, we were able to expeditiously, at speed and at scale, use that technology to make milk fermentation more efficient. And what's remarkable is that within 5 years of having the first idea, the first scientific discovery, we worked with industry, I was at DuPont at the time, and we were able to launch globally more sustainable, more efficient starter cultures that make the best yogurt and the best cheese in the world. And what's amazing is that there's literally billions of people who consume those products every week. And when we talk about impact, and when we talk about desire to make a contribution to society, and we talk about addressing the grand challenges of the world, I think food is material in space and here, though the food here is much better, I understand. And being able to have the courage to apply those technologies to those grand challenges makes a big difference to everybody on planet Earth and beyond.
So Rodolphe, let me stay with you for a minute. Tell me something. What's the difference between wanting to innovate and needing to innovate?
I think wanting to innovate is aspirational. I think as scientists, when you're young or when you go to NC State, you're in the lab, you're in the classroom, and eventually you graduate, you aspire to be innovative. But to go back to the point that you made in the introduction, if we want to address the grand challenges that impact planet Earth, we need to innovate. We need to change what we do and how we do it. And we need to do it and make it affordable. We need to make it scalable. We need to make it equitable. We need to make it ethical. So we need to do it well. We need to think through it, and we need to actually do it. The think and do motto certainly applies there. But we have to be innovative to be able to be disruptive enough to address those grand challenges. That's a must-have. It's a need. It's not a want.
So, Krista, I'm going to stay with you for a little bit. Your question is, why is that important at a public university versus the private sector doing it?
Yeah, so I think thinking about the want versus need, at a university like NC State in engineering, we can do both. We can do the aspirational, fundamental things that maybe we don't know where it's going to end up, but we have interesting questions we're trying to answer. And then the need is that you see solutions that maybe aren't working anymore, and you have to come up with some new things. And so I think at a university, we have such a long time horizon. We don't have to just produce an answer immediately. We're not worried about, a financial return on investment the way the private sector might be. So we can tolerate more risk in a lot of ways, and that's not, true across the board, but we're also training the next generation of scientists and engineers, and they need to have the space and the freedom to fail. And I think if you're not failing, then you're not actually trying to be innovative enough. You need to be taking risks, and that's where a university like NC State shines, is that we have sort of that breadth across engineering and science and ag and all of the different fields that we have expertise in, that we can approach problems in a really different way than private industry could.
So you said a lot.
Yeah.
But one phrase that you said, no, in a good way.
Okay. I'll keep my word count
No,
down
no,
next
no, no.
time.
What you said is about failing. In this room and all across this campus, you mentioned that it was a good thing
It is.
to fail. So I'm going to ask you to follow up on that a little bit, and anybody else just real quickly. I don't want to leave that teachable moment behind.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good example is what I was talking about before with some of our materials work, that it was failing because of the instability, and we didn't anticipate that at the beginning. And so I think those failures teach you new things, and it pushes the boundaries. And, you know, if you're staying safe and you're, you know, sometimes things work exactly the way you think, but in research, that's usually not true. And so I think encouraging and not penalizing and making people feel bad if they fail, you know, running a research group, which we've all been working over the years doing this, like you need to normalize failure, actually, and it's a good thing. That's where the growth comes from, and we have the tolerance for it at a university.
Rodolphe, you look like you on.
Yeah, I mean, I got to jump in here. So I fail all the time, and I think it's a good thing, and I think it's one of the things that we'll learn here. So I think I fail in research. That's why it's not search, it's research. You got to do it multiple times, and you fail and fail and fail. So that's part of the game. I think I fail oftentimes when I ask investors for money when we have crazy ideas. And then usually we prove them wrong later on when we deliver on what we said we were going to do. And then I even fail. You mentioned I was an Inventors Hall of Famer and a member of the National Academy of Inventors. And some of our inventions sometimes get rejected by the patent office because we have to explain to them why it's novel, why it's going to work, why it's realistic. And I enjoy the process of engaging with the patent office. And we have to sometimes use the failure as a motivation and also as a reflection that what we're trying to do is hard. And if we never fail, it means probably you're not trying hard enough.
Got it. Let me just follow up with this. We're talking about research. I think all of us know the unpredictability of federal research funding. But what we've also learned through you, Christina, is how important this federal research funding is. Let me just open that up to the table for anyone who wants to begin.
I can take that one just from my perspective. And to me, it goes back to the question about needing to innovate versus wanting to innovate. And what Krista mentioned about how sometimes that distinction is about the room you have to fail. Needing, to me, usually signifies maybe a commercial need, or you're solving a very specific problem and you have to do so under a quick timeline. But the critical difference there is creativity to me. Because when you want to research, you have a little bit more room. You don't have that overarching urgency that can drive innovation, but can also drive fear of failure, like you said. And that's where the funding situation comes in, to basically pick up and provide that background level of support for failing. Because yes, we see at NASA in our role as doing the things that aren't yet commercially viable, but then handing over the markets that we open to the commercial sector, continuing on the frontiers that aren't commercially viable. And I even see it in something I love to do that we're doing later today, rock climbing. Failure should be a metric of success. If you are not falling off the wall, you are not pushing yourself. And proper funding allows us to have that creative space, to want to innovate, and therefore to fail along the way.
Well, just one quick point on the falling off the wall for students today.
Protected, again.
Make sure you sign a waiver. No, I like what you said. Let's make the Chancellor a little nervous on that.
Those ropes.
Bina, I think you want in on this one.
Yes, federal research is really important for everything we're doing here and all over the country. And I think it's a well-known fact that a country that stays ahead in technology is the country that leads the world. And in academic research, the role that academia plays is really critical in keeping that leadership of the country. And so we really depend on that in NC State and other schools, especially in the public institutions, because we're working on large problems. And federal research, if that's reduced, it'll impact the progress of innovation, it'll impact the number of students that enroll in our research program. So there's a lot of risk there. So federal research is really critical. Otherwise, we have countries, there's no surprise here, China is investing heavily in quantum and AI and semiconductors, and we need that leadership, and academic component plays a big role in that, as Krista knows so well.
And Krista, you just finished your first year as the Vice Chancellor for Research, and you've done an incredible job. Talk a little bit more about this issue, about why it's critical, federal funding.
Yeah, and I'll just sort of add on to what Veena said, that since the 40s at least, the partnership between our federal agencies and academic research has been the envy of the world. I mean, it led to going to the moon in the 60s, all the way up till now. Countless innovations, the internet, all of these things came from the partnership between federal agencies and universities. And what that money is actually doing, that is paying for our graduate students. It is paying for the materials they need to do their research. It is creating the whole ecosystem. And the importance of that cannot be understated or overstated, because if you don't have that happening at the university level, your pipeline for innovation is going to dry out. Like you can't continue. Innovations don't just pop up out in industry without some of the groundwork. And so that's always going to be so critical. It's how we train our next generation of scientists and engineers. And if we don't have that partnership, you're definitely going to see a difference in the types of innovations in the future that can come out of our country versus other ones. So it's so important. And I mean, it's how all of us are here today, is investment in the research ecosystem from the federal level.
So I agree with everything that's been said, and it's been well said for sure. However, I think there's a silver lining too, and there's an opportunity that goes back to being creative and agile, because this potential financial shortcoming from federal sources is forcing us or inviting us or compelling us, depending on how you see it, to work with different stakeholders. And I think it has, in the recent past, forced us or invited us to work more with industry, and including local industry, many companies in RTP that work with NC State, many companies throughout the state, North Carolina, the nation, and even internationally that now engage more deeply with NC State so we can solve their problems. And I think that engagement, not just with federal agencies, but also with industry, is allowing us to evolve and also be more translationally relevant with a lot of people who are going to use that commercially.
So what I hear each of you saying is about federal research, how important it is, but talk a little bit about graduate education. As I look around this table, all of us have a graduate degree, and some of us have 3. I guess this is the table with 3 from one university, which is pretty awesome. But graduate education is a huge part of that ecosystem you talked about, Krista. But why? How do we help get this message across, not only locally, with the state leaders and the federal leaders, but why is graduate education so critical today?
I can start with a few comments. The graduate students involved in academia are really the future engine of innovation for the country, as we've been discussing. And they are the ones that will get that deep insight into a particular topic, and then they will go and become the technical leaders in different areas. In engineering, that there are areas like quantum and semiconductors and energy and batteries and robotics. It is really, really critical to attract and provide a very good experience for our PhD students. This is one concern that we all have right now, is what's going to happen to the graduate engine. One opportunity, building on what Rodolphe was saying in terms of being creative here, is can we now figure out a way to get our undergrads to go more into research? Can we cultivate that side of their experience here and expose them to research, maybe even in the first year, and then hopefully they'll get excited to do maybe a PhD in the future. But we also need to perhaps reconsider what the PhD experience is all about. And I know we all have different ideas on this topic.
Well, let's just stay there a little bit. You went into master's, PhD. Why?
Curiosity and the desire to know something very deeply. But curiosity, I would say, for me was my leading compass. And Christina, I've heard you say a lot of inspirational things about this as well.
Well, absolutely. Thank you. I agree with everything that I heard you say, and curiosity is also an engine. It's one of my engines. In terms of communicating this to the outside world, I think we could point out the things that won't be happening if we don't have graduate research. We won't have people writing the books that we are all looking to. We won't have people celebrating wins in medicine, in food science, in great challenges. We won't have people looking to this country when the next big global crisis happens for solutions. And that absence of something sometimes can be very compelling, because the truth is, just like when we did this mission around the moon, and all the people designing the operations, the vehicles, might have wanted to go to a textbook to understand how we do what we do, but instead we were writing the book. And that is what a graduate mind has to change to realize they're doing. And that's really what we're celebrating, is writing the book rather than looking for the book to read.
Rodo.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And I had to go to grad school 4 times. I don't think it's because I'm slow. and I did graduate every time. I really like school. And I think it has given me both breadth and depth of understanding. I think some of the problems that we're trying to address and the challenges that we're trying to address as well and solve are very difficult. If we have to go deep, I mean, some people get to go high, we go more deep. And it's hard. And unless you have the technical knowledge, the technical expertise, and the deep knowledge about what you're trying to solve, whether it's quantum computing, whether it's food science, whether it's farm, or whether it's therapeutics, you have to have that equipment with you and the prism through which you can take in a problem so you can solve it. And it requires creativity, it requires luck sometimes, it requires skills and inventiveness. And without all those ingredients, it's impossible to solve some of those grand challenges. So I think going to school is great. It's changed my life multiple times. I'm only twice an NCTEM alum, not 3 times like other people here. But it has made a huge difference. And without that knowledge and that attitude of think and do, I would not be able to do what I'm doing every day.
Krista?
Yeah, and I'll just maybe add, especially if you're an undergrad or high school student, I didn't know starting out that I was going to end up in this job. I didn't even know this was a job back then. But, when I was finishing up college, I co-opted at a chemical plant. I'm a chemical engineer, and so I was like a process engineer. I really disliked that job. It was boring. I'm sorry if there are process engineers out there. It's a great job. It's a great job. But after the first semester, I sort of knew how to do it. And then when I went back, I was like, this is maybe not it. And so that's how I ended up interested in doing a PhD. I was the first in my family to go to college, so I sort of had no framework for how to do any of it. So if you feel like, oh, I don't know where, that's okay. And I think, it's actually the process that helps you understand what possibilities are out there. And a graduate education is so special in that you do go from textbooks and problem solving and, working in group projects to still working in group projects, but now nobody knows the answer. Your advisor doesn't know, you don't know. And I think there's nothing more freeing than that. And I tell my PhD students all the time that this is the best time of your life, and they can't feel it in the moment, but there's no other time in your whole life that you can really just focus on a problem like that and just go as deep as you need to answer it. So I think, it changed my life, graduate education did, and led to where I am today. So I think, don't be afraid to try new things, even when you don't know, you're not sure where that path's gonna go.
Great counsel from all. We're going to pick up the pace just a little bit. And I want to ask, Christina, I'm going to come back to you on this difficult question here. You ready?
I'm ready. NC State has prepared me.
NC State, there you have it. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but what's the most profound way advanced technology is reshaping what it means to be human in the 21st century?
Wow. What it means to be human. What a phenomenal way to look at this question. It's such a different perspective than what's the most amazing technology happening right now to change the world, because this is about what it means to be human. And the first example that comes to mind, I have to take from my own experience, which would be leaving the planet and looking back at a very, very small Earth and seeing all of the blackness around it. And it was so small that even calling out continents seemed ridiculous, because you'd be talking about them in the context of the universe. And having that human perspective on our shared home, I think, changes how we see ourselves. And I really hope it changes how we see our relationships to each other. And taking it back to planet Earth, there's not necessarily one technology I would point to, but because so many of our technologies aim to increase efficiency, and what we end up filling that time with is often things that do connect us, I think we're entering an age of less time for reflection as humans. And I think that's something we should think about. How do we reintroduce perspective and reflection in this time where every moment we're expected to be doing 6 things, because we've been given these tools of massive efficiency. And so the next step I would say on that, being human, that's more society-based, would be, as we innovate so much faster, and if we fit, the speed of this innovation is not linear, it's becoming exponential, we have to look at how we govern ourselves, because we will not be able to keep up with individual technologies. We have to come up with a governance structure that is actually so based in a system that makes sure that the basis of equity and fairness is built in, because we will not be able to keep up on an individual technology basis. We just have to have something much more structurally sound to keep everyone safe as we humans continue down this road.
One of the things I remember you and your crew, you described Earth as being tiny Earth.
Tiny Earth.
Can you talk about that just a little bit?
I can. Would you all indulge me and everyone put out their thumb like this? And now imagine you move your thumb to the side and there's Earth behind it. That's how small it was. Everything you've ever known, every time you fell and got back up, every graduation, every speeding ticket, every degree, a lot of them on this side of the table. Everything was in that tiny little sliver of the universe. And it just changes how you see yourself operating. And I think it gives you pure knowledge that there is such thing as a global scale. And it's actually a lot smaller than we think, because when you're living inside it, it's just the background of your lives. And you don't even realize that you're absorbing it and treating it like an absolute. But it's not an absolute. We have a proof that it's not. We can change our world, which means it's our choice to live in whatever kind of world we'd like to choose.
Very well said.
Thank you.
I still got my thumb out there trying to figure this out. Technology is the word Rodolph, and I'm going to come to Krista as well. A lot of different changes, advanced technology, AI. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I have some mixed feelings, right? And I think a lot of people have mixed feelings about some advances in tech, AI, quantum computing, CRISPR, genome editing, rewriting the code in the computer or the code of life. It comes with ethical responsibilities for sure. So I understand the concerns and the risks and the challenges, but I'm an optimist. And to me, a lot of those technologies, including AI, genome editing, and others, are very enabling to do our research. They're accelerating the pace, they're accelerating the scale at which things happen, so it's a small planet, but we can still do a lot nonetheless. And it's allowing us also to tackle some of those grand challenges that we don't have much time to tackle, like to be more sustainable or to have energy and water resources that are finite be better used. And so as a tech optimist, or as a scientific optimist, or as an optimist engineer, I think we have to have the wisdom to reflect upon the responsibility that we have to use those technologies well and ethically with the right governance and the right principles and the right consequences in mind. But we have a responsibility to use the best tools possible to tackle those grand challenges. Because if we don't use the best technology, the fastest technology, the best computers, the supercomputers, eventually quantum computing and AI, we won't be able to do what we have to do in the right time. And we have to have the courage. And we talk about you were saying in the first question, we have to have the courage to harness those resources responsibly, but also diligently.
And on courage, Krista, what's the future of the research enterprise in the age of AI?
Yeah, so I think I agree with what Rodolphe was saying. AI lets us answer research questions faster. And we can, here at NC State in engineering, we have self-driving labs with robotics that can be set up to do material science that used to take somebody in the lab, months and months to do a certain number of experiments, and you can do it, just in a few days. And so we're able to accelerate the pace of what we're doing. So I feel like maybe what we're thinking about now, we were just talking about this in the green room actually, that like our students especially, they need to be trained now with really what I just will call judgment, because they need to be able to judge what questions are important. AI is always going to give you an answer, but what is that answer, correct for what you're looking for? So I think while it accelerates the pace, you still need the human involvement to ask the right questions and have the judgment on the output and to help iterate. So you can't yet remove the person from the process. But I'm also optimistic. I mean, I think just the speed that we're going to be able to do things lets us ask new questions that we couldn't ask before.
So Vina, how are we showing up in our communities then? All this different technology, we're a land-grant university. How does NC State make an impact in all the communities across our state?
Yeah, so NC State, as we all know here, is a land-grant university. We are accountable for providing resources and support for places that don't have access, such as our rural areas in the state. And you also have heard about engineering expansion, where we are expected to grow up to 14,500 plus students, thereby creating the future workforce for the entire state of North Carolina. And like in CALS and engineering, we also have a specific effort to reach out and serve the land-grant mission. We have what's called the IES, Industrial Extension Services. And just very briefly, they work with companies all over the state, provide them training in various areas, including how to use AI for improving their business efficiency. We also have research that's connecting with stakeholders across the state, such as how do you image large crop fields to detect disease progression quickly, as just one example. And the third one is providing talent to these rural areas. And one program that is in the College of Engineering is called Rural Works, where since 2018 we have placed over 800 students as interns in all of these counties in North Carolina, with the hope that they'll become a good workforce opportunity for the future. So we are very well focused on our land-grant mission and providing this knowledge and resources.
Great. I want to go back to tiny Earth just a little bit here, Christina. I still haven't gotten over that. Discovery. We're all hearing that today, how important research is and discovery and making sure that federal funding is provided so NC State and other land-grant universities can show up in the communities. But Christina, how do you envision that daily footprint going beyond Earth, tiny Earth? How do you see us coming back home in our local community? In other words, what you did was so amazing. You touched the whole universe, the whole world, and definitely at NC State. How do we use what you've done, or do you see a future that we could go back, not just yourself, but others, and how do we bring that to the communities, what you've learned?
Wow. That is our ultimate responsibility, because if we aren't going for all and by all, we're definitely not doing that. So one thing is opportunity, making sure that everyone can play a role in it, and that we've, yes, given people tools to be their best, to be the first in their family to go to college, but also something to reach for. So there's the inspirational aspect of what we do. There's the fact that we were built to explore, and we are fulfilling our destiny as humans by being curious in the lab and being curious in expanding our frontiers. But there's so many other tangible things that those benefits bring back, because I do see us as having a presence, a permanent presence even, on the moon and looking even deeper to Mars. We have the chance to answer one of the most fundamental questions of our time right now, which is, are we alone? We are on a brink where we are answering that in a number of ways through both lunar exploration and going deeper into Mars, as well as remote, the Kepler mission, discovering planets around other stars. And then there's even more tangible than that. There's the scientific benefits that brings discoveries we don't even know we might make. There's the innovation that happens in the background to create the tools that we need to do this. And even in North Carolina alone, there are so many companies that contributed to the Artemis mission, from towns like Shelby, believe it or not.
Big city now.
Yep, it's true. They're on the Artemis supplier list for sure, but all across this great state. And that's just one example of how we are bolstering innovation. And then I'll just talk about one other tangible thing, and that's skilled manufacturing. Because manufacturing is something we obviously know that to be an industrial leader in the world, you have to have. And in aerospace, that manufacturing has to be within our borders. And that means that it bolsters that industry as well. So there's everything from the completely inspirational and aspirational down to the absolutely tactical that I see we have in expanding our frontiers in space.
So let me open this nets. Appreciate you throwing in Shelby, big city.
Shelby.
But I've got about 10 minutes left, so we're gonna do some rapid fires answers. You ready? We're all higher education leaders and know the value of higher education. But my question is, how do we ensure our students are ready to propel the future that you just discussed? Rodolphe.
I mean, I think it's basic things like think and do, right? We have to learn to think responsibly, and we have to learn to do to solve those problems. But to me, the most important lesson is the only thing you have to learn is learn how to learn. Because the world is changing so fast. Technologies today that didn't exist just 5 years ago, 10 years ago. If you're not learning to be a good learner, you won't be able to adapt to the future, maybe let alone invent it. So learn to learn and be good at that.
Okay, Krista.
Yeah, I think teaching students how to solve problems and understanding that we can't predict what they will need to know in 10 years, 20 years, or what they're going to do in their careers. So I think laying that baseline foundation for how to do things and how to approach problems, I think.
Okay, Vina.
I would add that students should be comfortable with change. And there's rapid change, as you mentioned. We have one technology here today. We don't know what's going to be happening next month. So it's getting students to be comfortable with the rapidly changing areas of their field.
Christina?
Well, everyone took my answers. So I definitely agree with everything I've heard. And since I heard a lot about the what, I'll talk about the how maybe. Everything that we do, because I definitely believe we need to create doers, we have to do with two things, integrity and humility. And if we teach our students that, they'll be well equipped to be doers.
Okay, we're going to stay here with the table group discussion. Christina, you often use that term crew. And so for the next chapter of public higher education, and quite frankly, for NC State, what do you need from each other to help build on that momentum if we're the crew to shape the future of higher education? Vina.
That's a great question, Chancellor. I have thought about this a little bit, and I would say that from Christina, we would like you to come and inspire your message and continue to inspire the next generation of students. Maybe that means you come and become a faculty member here.
Oh. That was a good answer.
Wow.
That's a great answer.
And
Christina,
Join the crew is what I'm hearing.
From Rudolph, I would like to understand how you invented CRISPR and if we can expand that thinking into other areas. It's a breakthrough technology. And from Krista, I would like your continuing to do what you do for the research mission of the university so that specifically young talent can survive and thrive in research. And Chancellor, please keep, yes.
I didn't know it's important.
Please keep, you're the part of the crew. Please keep leading this university in the greatness of the land grant mission that we have.
Thank you. Thank you. Very well said. Let's go to Krista.
All right, I don't know how to follow that, but well, I would say, yeah, first of all, I agree that with our distinguished alums and those who've gone on from NC State to do awesome things, we need you to come back and also not just to inspire, but to help us know what kinds of things that we could be doing to help solve the next, grand challenge. And I think from the deans, I think having that support of faculty and, support in a very financial way of their labs and standing those up and having the students that they're training and mentoring is critical to the research mission. And then faculty, you are training the engine and the lifeblood of everything that happens on campus. And so that's where my role comes in, is providing infrastructure and support and processes and systems that make it as easy as possible for you to do research. And if I can accomplish that in my time here, that's, I think, what I can contribute.
Rudolph.
Yeah, I mean, well said. I love the talk of the crew, and if you haven't seen that on YouTube, you should go and hear her share, just hot off, back on earth, how she felt about this, because it's inspiring. And of course, as we all know here, as friends of the pack, we're part of the pack, we're part of the crew, right? And we have leadership and great leadership showing us the way. I think to me the lesson is we all have to do our part, right? I like 20 minutes ago when we were like climbing walls, and the first thing the lawyer thinks is you got to sign the waiver, right? And that's why we're here, because we all need to work together. And I think that diversity of prisms through which we see the world and the diversity of the skill sets that we have at the table and in the room, we have to work together to do it. And that's why it works.
Very well said. Christina, tell us about the crew and what you actually said.
Oh, well, what I actually said that day was just that a crew is always stroking together, willing to silently sacrifice for each other, and inextricably and dutifully linked. And those things are what I can see being formed on any team with a shared purpose. And I think if we're a crew, I'm going to have to start calling you Commander. Do you mind? So everything I heard, the supporting each other, just awesome. And if I could think about what helped us as a crew, because us becoming a crew was not necessarily easy. We worked really hard at it. And one of the critical things was trust. Trust, though, I've never been able to really well articulate how you get it, but one of the things you definitely need is shared rules of engagement. You need to know how you can lean on your team, because as diverse as you are, which is incredibly important. You also have to have the same ground rules. You have to have the same integrity. If one person's going to show up for each other, we all do. But with that, held to accountability for those ground rules, you also have grace. Because when you have trust, you 100% know that your crewmates have the best of intentions. And that means that you can give grace when needed and hold to accountability also when needed.
Very well said. I've got less than 5 minutes, and I've got 2 questions left.
I apologize.
No. That's perfect. We want to be the crew. You told us to have grace.
Thank you.
So we got
I
it.
needed some.
I'm the commander now. You go. But final, I got to do one more extra. Come on. I've got a sign that says final question, but I got one quick answers. When I mean quick, let's go quick.
Fair.
Okay? You have unlimited funds. Now, it's tough for the Chancellor to say you have unlimited funds, but quick answers. How would you use that fund? Christina, let's stay with you if you were to help NASA and the astronauts. One word.
Opportunity.
Perfect. Elaborate. Sorry.
The way we reach the most people is that no one's left, even before they ever have the chance to come to a fine university like this and contribute to the leading edge of technology. We should tackle illiteracy. We should tackle opportunity at the very beginning. And everyone should know that they could end up somewhere like here if that's where their gifts take them.
Okay, Krista.
Unlimited funds, I would fund all graduate students on campus forever.
I might need to stop this, but we're going to keep going.
And higher stipends too.
Oh, boy.
I'm gonna echo that. I think invest in education, whether it's undergrads, grads, local, distals, fellowships, research. We got to invest wisely in education.
Great answer. Vina?
And enhance the undergraduate experience. We are a huge undergraduate university, and enhancing their experience and get them ready for the world.
Love it. One final question. What's the one question no one is asking? No one's asking that we should be addressing. Vina. Go on.
I would say that one question would be, how do we make sure that we are continuing to think deeply? This is a little bit of what you were mentioning earlier. How do we continue to think deeply as we become more efficient with AI, as an example?
Okay. Rodolphe.
How do we go faster? We don't have time. We have to go fast.
Like that.
The end.
Krista.
I think in such a fast-paced, fast-moving technological phase, how do we make sure everyone has access?
Great answer. Christina?
I'm going to give you 2 answers. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
First of all, a question.
You're the next in charge after the commander now.
Thank you. No, it's not that no one's answering this. This is a question near and dear to NASA's heart. I hear it talked about less and less is how do we tackle climate change? It's still incredibly important. And then the other, I'll have to go back to something I started earlier. I don't hear people talking about changing the structure of governance so that we have almost more of like a subscription model for doing the right thing and keeping ourselves safe rather than these one-off solutions to be able to go fast.
Very well said. So ladies and gentlemen, this is my last question to you, Christina. I'd like to end with you looking into the future. And as I look around this room and I see students all across this campus, they too have dreams like you have and like this panel has had. Leaving rural North Carolina, leaving wherever they're coming from, coming to NC State. What should NC State be teaching this next generation?
It goes back to something I said before, and I think everyone will appreciate a short answer. We have to be doers. There's an incredible sink or pull, magnetic almost, to just being in a constant state of taking in information. We have to act. We have to be bold. We have to have a sense of urgency to act. And then we have to have the ground rules of humility and integrity in every single thing we do.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Christina Koch and this outstanding panel for the conversation we've had today. You need to stand up. Thank you. Thank you for my name. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank all of you for coming out today, for the love, the support that you provide to this university to help not only outstanding people like Christina Koch from Jacksonville, North Carolina, from White Oak High School, from the North Carolina Science School of Science and Mathematics, but also a 3-time NC State graduate. And with that, please join me in saying my favorite words, go Pack.